Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm here in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
And I'm Julie Hardmew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of the show will know that we're part of the Creatives Group, the private network for creative professionals across the globe. Together, we help you create at your best, connect you with like-minded individuals, therefore helping you to grow your creative practice and your creative business. If that sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to join our growing number of creative professionals, please don't hesitate to contact us after the show. We'd be delighted to talk to you. But now it's time for On the Couch. So Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Well, on the couch today is Richard Holmes of Big Rich Films Limited, a veteran of the British film business with many critical and commercial hits under his belt. His last film, The Ritual, was produced for eOne and sold worldwide to Netflix. But why we've asked Richard onto the couch today is because he's invented something that is so simple and yet so effective, and something that should excite anyone who's in the voice or podcast or music business or any profession that deals with audio, anyone really whose work involves sound. So let's get Richard on the couch. Hello, Richard. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me and for calling me an inventor, which I suppose is true, but I have only invented one thing.
And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I'm very excited about it, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. Julie, you can kick off because otherwise I can hardly contain myself. I'm bouncing up and down, so I'm so excited. Off you go, Julie.
Well, before we reveal what you've invented and talk about that, could you give us a bit of an idea of your background? Because you've been in the film industry for like 30 years.
I started as a comedian. I was in a double act with a guy I met at university, and we did it professionally for about 2.5 years in like Comedy Store, Jongleurs, The Tunnel down in London. And our shtick was doing film sketches in like 2 or 3 minutes. So we would condense genres like horror or James Bond or Star Wars into 2-minute physical sketches. And we got bored of that because it was all about concentrating stuff down, and we wanted to become give our creative juices a bit of rein. And so we wrote a couple of short films, which we made. And one was very, very bad, and one was quite good. And it led to us getting our first film made, which was written by Peter Capaldi of Doctor Who fame, and did pretty well. And we can talk about success and failure perhaps a bit later on. But it did well because it won a Scottish BAFTA for Best Film, Best Actor for Peter, and it won the London Film Festival Audience Award. And pertinently, it got its money back, which is always a very nice thing for you and your investor. And I think that gave me the confidence to self-declare that I actually was a film producer as opposed to a comedian. That then, I suppose, spurred me to work out how the film business worked. That film had been the first one was a bit of an oddity in that one man had financed the entire thing for his own reasons, which I never quite really discovered why he did it. But we were all very pleased. So I wanted to work out how the film business worked, as I say, as a machine, as a business, and that it's about film development, script development. It's about talent management. It's about financing. It's about physical production. And it's about editing to delivery, marketing and positioning your film into the market through the edit process. And so it's a pretty full spectrum business. I don't pretend to be an expert on any of it, really. And I've often partnered, which I'll talk about again a bit later on. There are things that I'm good at, and there are things that I am less good at. And I think that has been a great life lesson for everything I've done since. So I've tended to work in the, I would describe as the commercial end of the independent market, but the Americans would still call me a die-hard art house filmmaker. But my aim is always to make things that entertain. So I've focused really on comedies and horrors because there is nothing more exciting or satisfying than finishing a film and screening it to an audience and hearing a reaction. It's that often overused term, but it's a sort of visceral reaction that you get. And that's extremely exciting and satisfying.
I can totally relate and understand that. Julie and I made our first film in lockdown. It's just a short film, and the criteria was it had to be funny. I didn't want to do a social conscience piece. There was lots of doom and gloom everywhere, and I said, one, I have to get out of the house, and two, I've got to have a laugh. I've got to have a laugh, otherwise I'm going to go mad. And I remember when we screened the first sort of public screening of the film, the adrenaline, my heart was going. I've never been so terrified in my life. It's probably the worst feeling. If somebody had asked me to jump out of a plane, I don't think I'd have been as scared. And I just thought, well, what if they hate it? Because it was very silly. It was we tried to make it a bit sort of carry on meet ceiling comedy kind of thing, and it was just typical British stupid comedy. And I thought, God, what, you know, people have progressed a bit since then. What if they're all woke in the audience? What if that? Oh my God, what if? And when we heard that first laugh go, I lit my stress from here to like, and then it kept coming, didn't it, Julie? And the audience thoroughly enjoyed it, and the feedback we had afterwards was just so lovely. But yeah, that until that first laugh went, like you said, that reaction, your nerves are like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So yes, I can appreciate with a comedy when they laugh, or a horror with that, you know, nothing quite like hearing the reaction.
Yeah, so you've been creating laughs and shrieks of horror for so long now, and some of your films have won awards as well, international film awards.
Yes, not many. I don't tend to make award-winning films, to be frank. That's not my aim. I'd rather make films which work for the audience. Some have done well at festivals, and some have won awards. And there are a lot of awards to win. I'm not trying to undercut my success, but it's there are a lot of awards out there. My responsibilities, I think, are to the filmmakers to make the director and the writer feel that they're delivering their vision, to the money who invested in it, and you know, you should try and do everything you can to get their investment back and make them a profit, and then to the audience. You know, I don't believe every film has to be you know, a horror or a comedy or have that kind of profile, but it should be appropriate for its audience. It should entertain its audience, and that's what I've striven to do far more than win awards. That said, I'd love to win an award,
Big one,
especially an Oscar.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about comedies. When I made a film called Waking Ned, which is a good film, very difficult to put together. And when we were shooting it, my colleague, I got into the car one morning to drive to set, and he said, do you know what the electricians are calling this film? This is before we're shooting it. And I knew it was good news. And he said, they're calling it Last of the Summer Guinness. In other words, a very soft Irish version of a sort of Sunday night TV program, which it couldn't be. But it haunted me. And it haunted me right the way through to the first screening, where it obviously wasn't. It obviously was a movie, and that people wanted to see and would pay for. But you do have to kind of keep to your vision. If you believe it's commercial, it probably is, but you just have to keep to that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing like going to the cinema. And I remember my first, I love film, but I don't go to the cinema, every week or anything like that. And I remember the first experience I had in the cinema of being almost like a theatre at the end of the screening, and it was The English Patient. And when that finished, the whole thing just erupted into applause, and that was the first taste I'd had of an audience kind of going mad, just the wonder of the film. And it took you on such an emotional journey. And it was like, oh my God, it was so lovely for me to see that reaction. And the second time I experienced it was with the Lord of the Rings films. And it was again when the titles were going up, and the actor who played Gollum, that's a split role. And when his name went up with his picture with the artist and his face next to it, the place just literally raised the roof. And I thought, my God, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could see, if as an actor, you could see that reaction? I felt so sorry he was missing it, that just his name on the screen had that reaction from the audience. But there's nothing like it when you've made something that really gives the audience that feeling, whether it's happy, sad, or whatever.
I completely agree. I'm a deeply unspiritual person, but I think that we all crave some kind of congregational experience. And I think it's easier in a barn or a church or or a movie house, but we can still get it slightly through online media now, and social media. But I think it's very important to the human condition, and that's why I think comedy is more obviously cathartic, but horror is as well. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like horror," and I'm not expecting everyone to like it, but I think it does have a use. It has a psychological effect on people, and there are many genres of horror, and some people like others, and some people like the blood and gore, and some people like the tension. But I think most people who are into horror get something more than simply being entertained out of it. They get a catharsis of some sort, and that's also very, very satisfying when you see people coming out of a movie that you've produced and they've been moved in that way.
Yeah,
I get nightmares. That's what I get from horrors, nightmares.
Oh, no.
Good. I'm sure that the filmmakers will be very pleased to hear that.
I love blood and gore to a degree, but I'm thinking, I wonder how they did that. Like part of my, I'm like, that's good. I wonder what they used for that. And I love a really good chilling psychological thriller where I'm actually scared out the seat of my pants. I don't like the ones that are so clever I don't understand what's happened at the end, and I'm sort of left going, hey.
I think if you're wondering how did they do that, they've not done a great job, because you should be so far into it.
Exactly.
You stop thinking about that. I've made a couple, which I think, The Ritual is one, which is unusual in that it starts in such a sort of domestic setting. It's in a pub. Some blokes in a pub discussing what they're going to do for this, their sort of lads' holiday for a week. And then you'd never anticipate where you are in the last few frames. It's so completely bonkers. That's why I love it. It's and you're there. You're not questioning that he's running through the woods being chased by a weird monster. You're totally in the moment. And most people are anyway, totally in the moment. And I've also made another film, which I think is very effective. And it's difficult to recommend because it's hard to watch, but is Eden Lake with Michael Fassbender and Kelly Riley. And that's a really difficult journey to go on. But I don't know anyone who's watched that film and not come out sort of profoundly moved by the experience.
Let's go on to what you did during lockdown, because obviously, like many people around the world, we all got confined to our homes. And what did you do?
Well, I did a number of things. I grew my beard, much to my wife's horror. She eventually said, "I won't kiss you anymore unless you cut this back a bit." But I grew my beard out to see how long I could grow it. I did that cliche thing as I learned how to bake sourdough bread. But I also had to sort of, mend everything in the house and make everything that needed to be done. And I have always been a bit of a doer and a bit of a maker. When my daughter came back from university, from Manchester, during her second year, she was doing terrifically well. She was on course for getting a first, which she finally did, by the way, in her music degree. And she needed to record somewhere. So actually the room I'm sitting in, which is now very lucky for me, is my workshop, but it was her bedroom. And it's quite a kind of cold, bright walls. It's hard plaster walls and blinds. There's no curtain. And it was just a little bit difficult for her to record her songs in. So I built her what I thought was a work of genius, which is a large box on a speaker stand in which she could put her laptop and her microphone and record her music. And she appreciated its effect, but she hated the actual box itself because it was absolutely enormous, took over, it felt like it took over half the room, and it smelt a lot of kind of foam chemicals and packing blankets. So I sort of, at that point, I didn't think anything more of it. It was functional and it did what she needed it to do, but I actually gave it away in the end. And then my son, I don't know, it sounds like the Von Trapp family, but my son is a comedian. He did that thing of thinking, well, I think this is going to go on. I've got a book in me and I'm going to write it. And darn me, he actually did. He actually wrote a book, proper fantasy book, which my wife agreed to record if they could edit it together. And they did that. And I built them, or her rather, a foam version of what I built my daughter, slightly smaller, much more compact because it folded, but had still the sort of problems that it was wobbly and it smelt still of chemicals. And so she used it once, but just said, I just don't think this is a real product yet. And I, again, sort of put it away. And I was sort of fiddling with it in a small plywood forms in models. And then my friend Nick Pryke, who I've literally known over 50 years, I went to visit him in his house, and he had this is post lockdown, or in between lockdowns, I think. And he lives in an enormous pump house, a Victorian pump house, where the walls are quite literally 6 feet thick. So all the windows are kind of down a tunnel, to shut the window. It's sort of weird. And so it would either be a dinky little curtain at the end of a 6 foot tunnel, or a dinky little curtain on the outside of the hole. And he didn't like either of those things. So what he did, I didn't know what the stuff was at the time, but he had a sheet of this PET felt, which I'll show you in a minute, which he then cut, sliced in clever ways that you could put it against this hole, push the middle of the PET felt, and it would turn itself into a box and slide into the hole and become a blind. And it was a real eureka moment of going, that's exactly what I need. It's architectural, it's acoustic, and you can cut it to pieces and it'll stay together. And so that was when it really, then I thought, he may be then a white foam board version of it. He's a very clever man. But then it started to look like a product. And that was the kind of transformative moment.
So let's have a look at what you came up with.
Hello, my name is Richard Holmes, and I've invented VoxBox.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So you just need to put your head in?
Hello, 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 hello. Oh, that's fantastic.
I have been a film producer for over 30 years, and I know that a good movie has to look wonderful and sound amazing.
All the sound is absolutely...
1, 2...
VoxBox was a lockdown project. After I grew my beard out, made all the sourdough bread, I started listening to podcasts. Some of them weren't very well recorded, and I noticed at the same time podcast makers, radio producers, actors were posting this kind of stuff on social media. And I thought, I wonder if I could make this better. So I made a mini sound recording booth for my daughter. It wasn't really mini, it was a big old thing. It sat on a speaker stand, stank of plastic foam, and it took over a room, and she hated it. So I went and made a lighter version out of acoustic foam that sat on a tabletop. It had the extra added feature that it was foldable, and it stored itself under a bed, sort of. My wife, an actress, used it to record an audiobook. It sounded pretty good. Her voice was rich and clear, and it had no reverb. It was a dry sound. Unfortunately, the box also smelled, and it was very wobbly, and she absolutely loathed the folding mechanism. So I went back to the drawing board and I made mini models of the hinge until I perfected it. I persuaded a friend who's a professional designer to take my functional, ugly assets and turn them into this white foam board box. He also introduced me to this stuff, which is PET felt, an amazing acoustic architectural material made of 60% recycled plastic bottles. It's lightweight, it feels pretty good, and it doesn't smell. With the help of a company in Bristol called Artworks, I started making full-size prototypes on their CNC cutting table. We designed and we redesigned and we tested and tested and tested until we got to this. So if you have ever made a sofa cushion studio on your kitchen table, if you've ever found yourself in a wardrobe balancing your laptop on your knee, if you've ever hidden under a duvet gasping for air, then VoxBox is for you.
Wow, this is perfect.
Hello, my name is Philip.
If you're a podcaster, if you're a journalist, if you're an actor, performer, singer, if you work from home and you have to do important presentations or phone calls, VoxBox is your solution.
It's like a recording studio. The difference between here and then coming into here.
It's absolutely amazing.
VoxBox is foldable. VoxBox is portable. VoxBox is storable. It'll make your voice sound wonderful.
That's absolutely brilliant. Well, that's absolutely brilliant.
So that was your first sneaky peek at the VoxBox. The VoxBox, I love that. And I think it's going to do tremendously well, especially for, people like students who need to record from home and voiceover artists or people who are on the move, because what I love about it is light and portable. So it's packable, and I think it comes with its own carry case, doesn't it, Richard?
It does indeed come with a highly functional carry case, a bit like one of those artists' portfolios. So it has a slightly longer shoulder strap, still a hand handle. You can put it on your shoulder and then reach down, and there's a handle halfway up the sack to kind of keep it supported for yourself. It's what I love about it, and I am very proud of it, is its utility. It actually works. It's actually functional. It really is portable and storable, and you can slot it away. And I suppose it's designed for people who are either sick of the duvet, that sweaty duvet head, or don't want to sit in a wardrobe anymore, or whose flatmates or partners are sort of sick of losing the sofa for half a day as it's taken apart to make a studio. So it's those people who are sort of moving on from that. And it's also for professionals who will have a setup at home, which will be better than VoxBox. It will be, but often find themselves on the move and recording remotely and needing a unit which gives them a sort of consistent, dry sound that they can drop into stuff, that they can add to stuff. So I think it has real utility, and that's what I'm very proud of. It has no glue in it, by the way, the other thing, which is just weird. It is one piece of material cut very, very precisely on a computer cutting table, and they just push fit together. So there's no glues, there's no hinges, there's nothing to come apart. It's almost indestructible. The wonderful thing about PET felt is that you can cut it really cleanly, but it will not rip. It's a synthetic felt, so you can't get a purchase on it. So the hinges that I've got made are cut so finely that the last bit of PET felt is 1 millimeter thick. And when I saw it, I loved it because it was so clean, but I was pretty freaked out that it wouldn't be durable. So I wanted to be able to give, in good conscience, people a warranty that this would last. They're spending, decent money on this, so I wanted to give them a warranty that it would last. And I couldn't do that unless it would last. So I sent off the hinges to a company called Intertech, which is I didn't know this, but there's things called materials testing labs. So all your clothing, all your furniture has had materials testing set against it. And they devised a test where they put my poor hinges in a vise, and then they tore it apart. It will tear eventually. And it had a tear strength of 44 newtons. And then they put a new hinge in a vise, and they bent it 500 times and tore it apart. I'll do that again. They put a new hinge in a vise, they bent it 500 times, and they tore it apart. And it had a tear strength of 45 newtons, if you remember your physics. They then put a last hinge in a new fresh hinge in a vise, bent it 1,000 times, and then tore it apart, and it had a tear strength of 46 newtons. So it has a sort of negligible loss of strength. And then that was further confirmed. The only trade show I've ever done as a participant rather than a buyer, but I went to the podcast show in May, and I put this box, actually, the one I'm in at the moment, my Chinese factory sample, I put that up and down over 200 times in 2 days. And it really doesn't look like it's ever been opened. It is an amazingly durable product at 60% recycled bottles, which I'm proud of. It's not 100%, but it's a decent stab. And if it ever does have an end of life, you can recycle it. You can put it in a recycle bin, and it'll go round again.
Wow.
So sit back and forth and show us the difference in the sound. Keep talking.
Okay, so if I come out here, you can hear that it's quite a bright, sort of reverby sound. But if I bring it into here, the reverb, it just eats reverb. I asked, because I wanted it to be competitive. So I've looked at my competitors, and there are some wonderful products out there. Really, they really are. Like Isovox, there's the walk-in sound recording booth, there's Studio Bricks. They are more expensive than mine, but they do a very, very good job. But they do a different job. You can't really put them away at the end of the day. That's what my unique selling point is. But they also have, data behind them. So I wanted to get some data behind VoxBox, and because of my business as a film producer, I know people who run post-production houses where you do ADR and where you do sound recording. And so I spoke to them and asked them who put their booths in, and got hold of these people and had a long, in-depth conversations about testing. And the more I got into it, the more I realized they didn't want to test my booth and give me data. And so I said, what's your hesitation here? And they said, there is no ISO, there's no international standard number to test it against. There are no ISOs for portable sound recording devices or sound recording devices set in a domestic setting. So I said, okay, but other people have data, and they were a bit like, yeah, I'm not sure what that really means. They were anyway, they would test it at some expense, but they wouldn't put their name behind it. And so that was kind of useless to me. So I said, I still want to show people what it can do. So I did 2 tests. One I would call a noise test, in other words, the reduction of decibels. and I will be putting that up on social media later. But it's a domestic test. I generate white noise very, very loudly in my workshop, and I show what the decibel meter records outside the box, and then I put it inside the box, and you can see that it has a really significant reduction in decibels. It will never be soundproof, obviously, but it has a significant reduction. But it really is, the other test I did is a reverb test, and it eats reverb. And it does make a sort of dry, consistent sound that you can trust.
And that's
Let's have a look at. Sorry, Melanie.
I was just going to say that's a big problem for a lot of podcasters and things like that when they're doing it from their rooms at home. It's that echoey sound interference. So for people who are podcasters and got channels that they're streaming a lot of the time, it's an absolutely brilliant solution, I think.
I think you're absolutely right, because part of the other inspiration was listening to podcasts, a lot of which are well recorded and some of which are sort of well recorded but inconsistent. And that's where I think, again, there might be a market, is you've got two well recorded contributors, but with completely different sounds. And it doesn't, kill the podcast, obviously, but it slightly bumps you. It throws you out of the flow as you realize that the next person coming in sounds slightly different. So I think hopefully that's, again, where people will start to use it kind of collectively, is that everyone will sound very consistent.
Well, you posted something which I thought was absolutely wonderful regarding what you're talking about, the reverberation. So let's have a look at that.
If we shadows have offended, think about this, and all is mended. That you have but slumbered here, while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle dream. No more yielding, but a dream.
Wow. So where was that actually filmed, Richard?
That was filmed in Manchester in the Royal Victoria Baths, which is quite an amazing venue. You can visit and you can also hire. There's also, you should know that there's a fantastic door to it. It has 3 doors: men, women, and second-class men, which is what we all think we really are. But in the olden times, the poor people went through the second-class men's door. It's an empty baths now, and it has the most amazing reverb acoustic. And my daughter won a prize during her degree, which was to have one of her songs recorded in the baths. So she sent it to us, and it's beautifully recorded and amazingly well recorded. But you can tell that it has this incredible church-like reverb. So when VoxBox was starting to work as a product, I thought it would be great to go back there and show what it does sort of raw with reverb. So I got my poor wife to do a bit of Shakespeare. I got me to do just a bit of like what it does to reverb. And my daughter sang a sort of looping note and holding a camera, because my wife and I are sort of from a distance, and then it cuts inside the box. So there could be a bit of magic there. There isn't, but it could be. With my daughter, you can see what it's like when she records herself in a sort of selfie way and then moves into the box, and how it sort of it just eats reverb. It can't, nothing. It's very important that I don't overstate this. Nothing without a back will ever completely destroy it. This is a whatever it is, 5-sided cube, but it does have a profound effect on it because most of it is eaten by the 2 back walls.
And if people who are listening to this thinking that sounds really, really good, and I've looked at the videos and that looks really, really good, and I'm a podcaster, or I'm a student who wants to create a podcast or do something sort of interview type program, where can they get hold of VoxBox? What's the next step if people say, yes, I want one?
Kickstarter. That's where you'll find VoxBox. You'll get it at a discount. All the very early bird offers, I'm afraid, have gone now, but it's at a discount to what will be the recommended retail price. If you follow our social handles at VoxBox Portable, you'll be guided to Kickstarter. If you go to Kickstarter itself and type in VoxBox, you'll come up with our Kickstarter page. I think that's probably all you need about where to find it. Yes, I think that's probably done. If you agree, Melanie, do you agree?
Yeah, and the details have been going across the bottom of your screen as we've been talking. That sounds marvellous. So, on that note, what would your top tips be for anybody wanting to sound better on their audio? Or I know you've prepared some top tips for us, so let us know.
I've prepared what I suppose I've learned with my first invention and trying to get it to market. So it's none of them are profound, but they are prototype, test and prototype. Make full-size models, make half-size models, make little maquettes, show them to people, and just test and test and test and develop your prototype. There's nothing more terrifying, as I will have to soon, is pressing the button on the factory version, because that's it. The factory will literally just they will cut and cut and cut on what I've signed off. So that would be my main top tip. And prototype's also quite good fun. This is still at prototype stage. This is the first factory sample. There will be a second factory sample. And between the first one and this one, someone made a very good point on a TikTok video that the 2 cable holes I've got were great for USBs, but some voiceover people and some musicians use XLR cables, the big sort of round ones that look like a sort of 10p piece at the end. So live on TikTok, I cut one of the USB holes into an XLR hole. Now, it was fun, but that will save me an enormous bit of negative feedback when XLR microphone possessors got their VoxBox and they couldn't fit their microphone cable through the hole. So prototypes are essential. The next top tip I'd get, and this is in any walk of life, and I've had them in the film business, but is mentors. Mentors, the mentor relationship is sort of, the cliche is, it's older person to younger person. At least one of my mentors is younger than me on this project, and they're all completely invaluable, and they almost sort of tumble together. So the first guy is this man I mentioned, Nick Pryke. He introduced me to PET felt. He also built me this beautiful maquette out of white foam board, like an architect's model, which everyone could then just hold and see and saw how beautiful it could be in a 6x6 version. He introduced me to Artworks, which is where I got my prototypes done. They're not even a prototype company. They're just a design company that does a lot of office interiors, but they know everything there is to know about PET felt, and they cut it all day. And my mentor there was a guy called Arthur Dixon Bell, who told me what was possible and also said, oh, you could do this. And like, can I? So that was absolutely invaluable. I also wanted to find someone who'd come from outside the product development industry, like me, and who'd seen a product through to market. So through a friend, I found a guy called Patrick Tatham, and this is worth putting up as well, plecobags.com, Pliqo. He invented and very successfully marketed on Kickstarter, and very successfully did an hilarious Dragon's Den on a beautifully made, incredibly clever suit carrier. So suit carriers are normally like half a suit folded together. Look at Plico bags. He's managed to get it into a space which a suit shouldn't fit into without ever wrinkling it. Very clever man and a very clever product. And he introduced me to my last mentor, who is my manufacturing services agent. I have an agent in Hong Kong called Russ Cohen, who's taught me everything I need to know about getting a prototype into factory condition, and all the processes that I need, and how much shipping costs, and what I need to think about import codes, and all the stuff that I'm learning is really down to Russ. He also gave me a top tip on the bags, because my carry bag, I made it, I do sewing as well. I made it a sort of, I thought, a really funky bag out of orange ripstop tent material. And I held it up to him and he went, no, Richard, black. You want a black bag. What if someone's wearing the wrong shoes and they don't want the orange bag? Just get a black bag. Black goes with everything. And he was absolutely right. And it was such a simple top tip, but he has been such a mentor to me. So that was my second one. And my third one is, again, not the most profound thing, but sleep on it. Yeah, if you run into a big cliff, just sleep on it. So for instance, I've had a few moments of thinking, oh, it's not going to work. I've described to you, like, my first big smelly one, my orange one, my orange foam one that just didn't really work. But the big kind of cliff I ran into was the hinging. I could get the hinges working one way, but the hinges on this box, when you see it working, you'll see it sort of folds both ways. It collapses like an accordion, and therefore the hinges go both ways. And there wasn't a way of cutting that out of one piece of material. So Artworks were very, very patient with me and sort of gluing fabric hinges on and drilling some hinges in, and none of it worked. It all kept falling apart. And they, in the nicest possible way, sent me back the corpse of my VoxBox wrapped up in bubble wrap. And it was the saddest thing I've ever seen. It was kind of like the sheets stacked up as they would normally fold, but with sort of destroyed edges where they tried to do the hinges, and they said we can't work it out. And I said to my wife, well, that's probably it. You know, it was interesting and it just doesn't work, so I've got to stop. And then I woke up thinking, well, there is a way of doing it, which is what I've done here, which is inserting the hinges, cutting teeth out and inserting the hinges into each other. And then you could put a reverse hinge in, and then you could get your accordion effect. And it was, you know, I said it to Artworks and they went, yeah, that should work. And all of a sudden it took off. And it is one of those moments where something becomes a prototype, goes from being a prototype to becoming a product, where you go, oh yeah, if I saw that, I would go, that's nice. And that moves nicely. That works. So that was all about sleeping on it. And I think that is, you know, it doesn't have to be sleep, but it has to be a pause and thinking not all is lost. You know, come back, look at it a different way and see whether you can get through.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good advice, because inspiration does come to you sometimes randomly, and usually it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. Quick, get that notepad up by the bed. But you do, and creatives, we've had this discussion on the show before, haven't we, Julie, that creative brains will always find a way. They will always find a way. Once you've gone away and had a think, and I watched Industrial Light and Magic on Disney Plus the other day, and you know, George Lucas's favorite, one of his key sayings was like, just think about it. Just think about it. When his creatives said, well, how are we going to do that? And they'd go away and they'd think about it, and then this is how we're going to do it. You know, and absolutely amazing. And you know, most creatives, there's no point in saying to a creative, you can't do that, because we'll find a way. Might not be the most direct route, but we'll get there in the end.
Absolutely.
Right, let's find out more about that inventive and creative mind of yours, Richard.
Right.
So this is the fun part. We wrap up the chat on the couch with the values jam cards, and you're going to pick a card and it'll be a value. And then Melanie will ask you some questions about it, and they're very odd questions. And you just need to, there's no wrong or right answer. You just need to talk, whatever comes into your head.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the on the couch part of on the couch.
Right.
We've had some wonderful
It's not wicked or evil.
We've had some wonderful answers, haven't we, Julie, over the years. Right, okay, I'm going to run my finger along my cards, and then you're going to say stop, and we'll pick the card. Stop.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, let's have a look. You picked well-being. Okay. So as we're all creatives here, we're going to ask you creatively about well-being. So Richard, well-being. What does well-being mean to you? What does it look, feel, and sound like?
I think I'll start with feels like. I think it feels like tranquility. Now, tranquility doesn't have to be boring, but it means that you have a plan and the assets and tools and the support to move forward. I don't think anyone enjoys, if they're honest, a feeling of sort of panic or fear or anxiety trying to live their life or to achieve something in particular. So I think that's what it feels like. I think my well-being looks, and again, this is, you know, so unprofound, but it looks like my family. You know, I've got very nice kids who are talented and out there and doing it and they work hard. And I've got a, you know, wife, a partner, 35 years, who still works just tremendously hard at what she does. She's an actress who's never been out of work, but is not famous. You know, she works theatre, TV, film, will work till she drops. And whether she gets a big part or a small part, she works just as hard at getting it right. And that's very attractive. So that's what it I suppose it looks like. What was the other one?
What does it sound like?
Does it sound like? Well, I've just recorded my first little clip showing how you can use VoxBox, selling all the time, how you can use VoxBox to record ASMR. So if I'm being very honest, it sounds like either running water or failing that, it sounds like a Hoover. I'm in bed or lying down, and I'm covered up. That's what it sounds like.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that. Very, very good answers. And I love the about your family as well. You know, we have a lot of answers around family and home. I think we had somebody, we were talking about safety or security, and that's, you know, that's home to me. And it's lovely, you know, when you just feel that, you know, home is a safe, wonderful place that you're secure and lovely. So that was it. Our time is up. Our time is up.
Very welcome.
Thank you so much for coming on the couch. Really, it's been such a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you.
Thank you very much. It's been, you know, it's such a weird thing to happen when I'm 60, and who knows what the future of VoxBox. It might not be a product that works, and I'm willing to accept that. But it's been a great ride, and it's been so interesting to do something at the age of 60, which is different. Yeah, it's not what I do, and so I'm meeting different people, and I'm learning really weird stuff about like volumetric weight and, you know, Newton tear strength and stuff like that. So that's been brilliant. And, you know, I've just really enjoyed getting out of my bubble and getting into another bubble, but it's just been fascinating.
And it's been absolutely fascinating hearing you talking about it as well. So if you have enjoyed this episode and you are desperate to get your hands on a VoxBox, which I'm sure you are, look at the details across the screen, go to Kickstarter, go to the website, investigate it. And if you get in now, you'll be able to grab yours for a very good price indeed. So I wouldn't hang around if I were you. But that's it. And this is the end. I could talk to you all day, and I thought, this is the end. I don't want it to end. But we have run out of time. So thank you for joining us and watching us today. Julie, thank you for being my co-host, and Richard, thank you for being the most fantastically amazing guest ever.
Thank you very much.
Until next time, we'll see you.